This is an interview on the 4th of June 2005 with Sergeant Les Simmons, V64888, 7th Platoon, A Company, 39th Battalion. Les, prior to joining the 39th, you were with the Bendigo Regiment, the 38th Militia Battalion. Can you tell us something about what you did in the 38th?
Yes, the member of the 38th Battalion before the war under another bloke's name. He didn't want to go to parades or to camp, so I was asked by the bandmaster, who was a friend of mine, would I join the regimental band, the 38th Battalion, which I did. I was 17 at the time, and then war came, and I came into the age group with a call up and went to camp with the 38th Battalion. I was made a regimental bandmaster about a week after I joined up, and I attended many camps right up till 1940, when word came through to battalion headquarters wanting volunteers to join a 39th Battalion, which was going to be a volunteer battalion to go to New Guinea as a garrison unit. And I thought, oh, this is great. I wanted to get away, and I wanted to do it the easy way so it wouldn't upset my parents, especially my mother, joining the RAF and going overseas, probably to get killed. So I thought, this is beautiful. I'm going to New Guinea. And to go interstate in them days was really something. Travel was not like it is today. So I applied to join this new unit, but I was told by the 38th Battalion that they wouldn't release me, and Brigade wasn't going to release me, which they wouldn't. And it was some weeks went by, I became Company Sergeant Major. I was promoted, and I only had that job for about a fortnight before it was promulgated through routine orders, and I got word to pack my gear, hand my equipment into the Q store, and report to transport for conveyance to Darley, where the 39th was being formed. So I went along to the 39th, and I was asked to form the regimental band, which I did. I took about a quarter of the Royal Park depot band, which was a band made up of older blokes, plus a lot of young blokes, and these people, 8 or 9 of them, volunteered to come over for the 39th, and some of them were mates of mine at school days and lived in Bendigo. So they were the nucleus of the band that I formed. We played around the camp after the band was formed, and when it came to Christmas Day, we were in camp at Darley, and I played around at the officers' mess, played some Christmas carols, had the band there, and then we marched up and down the lines then, playing carols for the troops. It was a different story to being in the 38th, where we had a sergeant's mess with private stewards in white jackets there, which a sergeant and sergeant majors used to dob in money to pay their wages. We had crystal, everything was crystal or silver on the table. And to go to the 39th Battalion Sergeant's Mess, it was tin plates and tin mugs. So we were brought back to earth. But anyway, the band was formed, and time came for joining the train to Darley. But the day before, on Christmas Eve, my blokes wanted to have a little bit of leave in Darley, go to the local pubs. I left them go there, and I'm left packing up our instruments and everything on my own. I found they didn't come back, so I had to get into Darley, go from one pub to the other, and bring them all back to camp to do a bit of work. And anyway, we got underway, and in the train, some blokes were sleeping up on the luggage racks in the carriages.
Was this on the way?
This is on the way going to Sydney now. Yes, embarking.
Prior to going up there, Les, did you have any infantry training as bandsman or not?
No, we had a little bit in the hills around Darley, that was the nearest to jungle training. We never thought we'd be going into a jungle anyway, and we did a bit of work there, which wasn't much, and the band had a lot of practice. But when we loved in Sydney, we put onto the ferries, and we see these big liners lined up at the harbour. I forget the name of the harbour now. It was Darling Harbour, and there was Aquitania, Queen Elizabeth II, Queen Mary. 3 of the biggest liners in the world were all moored there, and we went aboard Aquitania, RMS, Royal Mail steamer. And I can remember on deck looking across at some flats, multi-storey flats across from the where we were moored, and there was girls there hanging their panties out of the window. And I remember standing there with our baker, ended up being a baker, and I'm trying to think of his name now, from Chuka. I'll think of it later. But anyway, the voyage, the band was supposed to play for the troops, entertain them, and I was looking forward to that, and so were the bandsmen. And when we get on board, we wanted to get our instruments to entertain the troop. We found it on Soputa, one of the little merchant boats going alongside us. It had the instruments, and they were right at the bottom of everything else. Couldn't be got out till well after we landed in New Guinea. So my blokes had the job of going down about 7 decks below water, and well below the waterline in Aquitania, doing spud barbering and helping in the cookhouse. And they weren't too happy about this, so I went to the commanding officer and I said, look, I'd like my blokes to have a spell from the kitchen down below. We're supposed to be on deck playing and entertaining. Now, can they get a bit of relief? They'll mount machine guns or anything like that, but they wouldn't allow that. So that's how my blokes, and I felt very sorry for them, because I was up in the state cabin on A deck, the highest deck up, with fans on the bulkheads and all the luxuries that people had when it was in the good old days. And this is where Kevin Gray and I were mates. We were in the same hut at Darley together, and we were in the same cabin up in A deck. And we were issued with cigarette tobacco, ready rubbed, plus a couple of packets of papers, cigarette papers. We'd never smoked before, and we were trying to roll them. I remember trying to roll them on my knee. And we had cigarette papers all over the cabin floor. That we both became smokers from that day on. I got onto a pipe. But we had to sleep on deck. It was so hot, even with the fan on the wall there, it was so hot. But we had to be up early because the crew were coming along with their brooms, washing the decks down. So we had to pack our gear up, our beds up, and get into the cabin again. But that's the trip. We did sight a submarine, a Jap sub, midway up, going up the coast off Queensland, but nothing happened there. And there were alerts and things like that. There were concerts on board the ship by the members of the Institute, and there was a lot of swimming done in a big pool. They had a big tarp in one of the holes, and I remember King Neptune, this drama had been taking place where he was pushed into the water off his throne and things like that, and looking overboard, seeing the fish coming out of the water and running alongside the ship. The trip was quite good, and it was really something for us blokes who were born during the Depression, never ever dreamt of experiencing anything like this. We landed in New Guinea, and
what did you think about when you first sighted New Guinea? Well,
it's just hard to explain. It was just a foreign land and something unbelievable to think we're looking at New Guinea. It was a thing up on a map to us, and we moored about 3 miles out from the wharf because the ship was too big to enter the bay, and taken ashore. Some went on a small, I don't know, it was HMA Swan, a small warship, and I went on a armed longboat, had a machine gun mounted. And while we were waiting to go ashore, were looking overboard as natives were swimming around the ship out there, and we were throwing pennies and coins in the water, and they were diving, duck diving, and you could see the whites of the soles of their feet and their hands, so pure white compared to their black bodies as they were swimming down to get this money. And anyway, we go ashore, and the first thing we see and noticed is the smell of the place had a different smell about it. And that was something. That was adventure to us. And then there was natives, men with poinsettias in their hair and long hair and skirts on. And we just couldn't believe it. We were looking at real natives up there on the islands.
So after you got off the Aquitania, then the battalion formed up and you marched off to the 7 Mile.
That's right. It seemed to be uphill all the way. I remember George Mode, our regimental sergeant major, singing a song, "Old soldiers never die, they simply fade away." And we'd be asking natives, and this is dark now, going up that road to the 7 Mile drone, and we'd ask natives how far to 7 Mile. We're told we're going to 7 Mile, and I say, "Long time, Taubata, long time, Taubata." Everything was long time. They could never give you any distances. So when we arrived at our camping area at the 7 Mile drone, which is known as Jackson Airport now, we just had no equipment, no tents, no blankets, didn't know what was around us. We just laid on the ground, and that's where we slept for several days, because all our equipment was still on Soputa. Nothing had been prepared for us. They didn't seem to be expecting us. That's just the atmosphere that was there. And the heat was extreme, it was muggy, it was hot, it was terrible. But we were brought back to earth when we woke up and found out where we were. And my blokes ended up doing pioneer the pioneer blokes' jobs, digging trenches, and not just trenches. When I say trench, they're funk holes, only about 18 inches deep, 450 mils today, and that's as far as we'd go. It was in solid rock, but we ended up having to dig latrines 1.8 metres deep, 6 feet in them days, and that was through solid rock, using cold chisels and hammers. And my blokes weren't happy about that. We weren't there as pioneers. We were there as stretcher bearers, actually. That was the band's job, which I avoided. I didn't know anything about stretchers or anything. I was a band sergeant, and I was infantryman behind it all, because I'd done an NCO, an officers training school, and but I loved band work, and that's how I had that job, as being the band sergeant.
Les, at this stage at the 7 Mile, what was the feeling of morale with the 39th? Was it really good? Still, it was a good battalion to be in?
Yes, in a way. Just we weren't happy with the conditions there, and what met us when we arrived there out of the 7 Mile, and because things hadn't been organised properly, and it wasn't the unit's fault. But no, everyone was mates, and it was good. It was something different. We still reckon this is great. Here we are in New Guinea, and we're doing our bit for our country, I suppose, too.
Do you remember, you were involved in lots of work around the 7 Mile and Port Moresby, and some of the work was unloading ships.
Yes.
Do you remember about the MacDouey?
Yes, yeah.
Can you tell us something about that?
Yes. The band was ready to play. I think it might have been a Sunday, but that doesn't matter. We were to go out and play at one of the company positions, and word came through MacDouey had been bombed, because we could see the planes from where we were. And then we heard that Captain McLeod, a Bonza bloke, he'd been killed, and other people that we knew. And they, I think, were our first battle casualties. We couldn't believe it. And I reported to the CEO, and I said, look, is it okay for the band to still go out playing? I thought, it wasn't a time for that. And they said, yes, do that, which we did. That was really sad news for our unit to think something like that had happened. It hadn't come from aeroplanes or meeting the enemy on the land. It came from aeroplanes out at sea. And McDewey was there for many, many years after. It's been removed now, the wreck.
At that stage, there was a lot of bombing of the 7 Mile airstrip by Japanese aircraft and strafing by Japanese Zeros. Can you remember some of those instances?
Yes, only too well. They used to come over, especially at moonlight. We'd look up and see if there's a bomber's moon or not. And they would send their recce planes over first during the daytime. Then these Mitsubishis would come over and anything up to 80 planes. And you'd hear the squish of the bombs as they were coming towards you. It's like a carpet bombing, I suppose. We knew that they were hitting for something the size of a postage stamp underneath them, and that was us. And low we went right on the drone where I was actually camped. We were only hundreds of metres away from it. And the bombs would start at one end and you'd hear them coming towards you. And it was very frightening to hear these coming over. And the funk holes we were in were only a couple of feet deep, 18 inches to a couple of feet. And when we realised just how much we needed that cover, we'd be digging like mad the next day, trying to go down another couple of inches. And so that was went on day after day. We had a low-level strafing, and at 7 o'clock in the morning we'd be putting our breakfast on, cooking our breakfast, and that was about the time when the 3 shots would be fired from the aerodrome. The Air Force would fire this. This was a warning that there was a raid coming on. And I remember this happening every day after day until the unit decided that we're going to be ready for these blokes coming along. They used to come through with their aeroplanes, low strafing us as well as the bombing, and they brought all their machine guns in from the companies on the outlying posts and put them each side of the drone in the valley. And sure enough, 7 o'clock, the 3 shots went, and planes come down. I forget how many, probably 4 or 5, and in they came. And they didn't strafe us, but we were strafing them. And I think there was only one that was serviceable after we'd finished with them. No one got killed, but they were our own planes, which we'd been calling the Tomorrow Hawks.
Oh, they were the 75 Squadron.
75 Squadron, RAAF. We've been waiting for them for weeks and weeks, and we were told they're coming tomorrow. Tomorrow they never arrived, and when they did arrive, these Tomorrow Hawks were ours, and we actually shot them down. I think Squadron Leader Jackson was the squadron leader there.
He wouldn't have been too pleased with you.
No, and that one plane, I think it was on the day they arrived, went up, and he had to go to recce, a Japanese recce plane, way up above us. So that was the history of the RAAF. But up till then, we only had Wirraways to protect us. They were just no darn good. It was great to see the Kitty Hawks arriving. That's what they were, Kitty Hawks.
Apart from you playing with the band around the 7 Mile, one of your other little jobs that you took on was cutting the hair. You're a bit of a hairdresser.
Oh, yeah.
You're an amateur hairdresser, cutting the hair of your fellow bandsmen. But tell us a story about cutting the hair for Colonel Owen.
Oh, right. Well, I wasn't a barber. Never ever had been. Never cut anyone's hair, even my own, which I do now to save money. But I used to cut my bloke's hair, charge them a shilling, 10 cents today, and the Colonel must have got to hear of it, and he sent his batman up. Colonel Owen this was. He was our new colonel who took over from Colonel Conran, who was very ill. First World War veteran he was, and Colonel Owen sent his batman up to my tent to ask me to come down and would I cut his hair for him. And I said, yes, I'll do that. So I went down and cut it, and it was a shilling. And he said, look, I'll fix you up later on, Sergeant. I said, that's all right, sir. Anyway, he went over the trail the next day, and Colonel Owen still owes me 1 shilling. He was a great bloke, though. He was an excellent bloke. He was a gentleman, and we all respected him. And when we heard of his death over there, it really rocked us, I can tell you.
At that stage, were you getting letters and parcels from home being sent up to New Guinea?
Yes, they weren't very regular. There was a cake, especially a cake, sent up to me by Mum, and they had special tins made for these things to come up to the troops. And Arthur Sugden was our postmaster, and to this day, if I was to see him now, I say, "Where's that Christmas cake of mine, Arthur?" It never ever turned up, and I think somebody must have decided they would have enjoyed it better than we would have. But, yes, we used to get mail there, and it was really great to get mail. And I've got a lot of mail here now, stuff that I received from home and from friends, and letters I sent home. I've got just about all of them, all in books in there, still got them.
Prior to going over the track at the 7 Mile, did you carry out much training, infantry training, or was it just you were doing odd jobs?
No, there was training. It took place, as well as the odd jobs, because I wasn't concerned with the infantry, the rifle side of it. I was mainly band and went around, but I know that the different companies that I used to go around with the band, they had been out doing manoeuvres. Yes, they'd been doing that, but that was on top of unloading ships and trucks of petrol and stuff like that.
While you were at the 7 Mile, it came about that the Japanese had landed on the northern beaches, and that the 39th were directed to commence their walk up the trail and meet the Japanese. B Company left first.
Yes, yeah.
What were you doing at this time?
Well, we were just doing our usual band work, and Captain Lovett, who's my immediate officer in charge, came along to me and he said, "Les, I want the names of your blokes." I think he named 25 to accompany the troops and to be stationed with them as stretcher bearers, not even just the ones that went over or were going over the trail, but to send them out, distribute them to the different companies. And but mainly it was to go over the Kokoda Trail. And so he said, "I'll collect the list tomorrow." He came along tomorrow, and of course, me being a man that's infantry minded, I put my name down first, because that's what I went over for, I guess, or I'd made my mind up then when we got there, when things are bad, that I had to be up at the front. Stupid, but I had my name down first. And when he came, he said, "What's this?" He said, "You're not meant to go over there." He said, "You've got to stay back at Echelon, look after things here." So I pleaded with him. I told him I was a company sergeant major in the last unit and done infantry training, and I don't care if I lost my rank, and I don't care whether I went to signals or anyone, as long as the infantry and I was going over the trail. So he said, "Right, we'll organise that then." So I was put with A Company. Frank Trotter was the OC of the or company, the commander of the 7th Platoon. That's the platoon I went with, 7th Platoon A Company. And when I reported then, I said, "We don't know what the devil to do with you. We got all the sergeants and the NCOs here." I said, "Well, I don't know either." I said, "Just give me a job and just forget I'm a sergeant." Anyway, they put me in charge of rations. So I had a job officially then. But going over the trail, we get when we were actually, and I'm sort of skipping a little bit that's happened between now and then, I was with A Company, and it was during the Battle of Ishirara that our company, our platoon Commander Frank Trotter, Lieutenant Trotter, got malaria, was sent home back to Moresby, and Sergeant Wynne Murray, was a platoon sergeant. He was promoted to platoon commander. He was talking to me at Isharaba, and a bullet came along, and it was at the end of its trajectory, and it was spinning, and it hit him flat on the side of his leg. He said, "Simmer, I've copped one." I looked down and saw enough, the bullet had gone into his leg. It was his right leg too. I remember what leg it was. There we were standing there. He was sent back, so he said, "You're acting platoon commander now." So I was probably the first bandmaster in our history to become a platoon commander in action. And so I took over then, and that's as high as I got with the 39th Battalion.
Prior to that, B Company had gone over first under Sam Templeton.
Yes.
Did you know Sam Templeton? Or
Yes. Detective. And a blast for soldier.
And you went across, A Company went across afterwards, of course.
Yeah.
But, and, of course, some of the battles had already started prior to you getting there, and you saw some of the troops coming back.
Yes.
And they looked pretty, some of them looked pretty done in, didn't they?
They were. Here's us going over sort of fresh, I suppose, and these blokes were coming back unshaven, tattered, dirty clothes, and they'd had it. And it shocked us. And then we'd say, "G'day, g'day," and someone would say, "Oh, Doc Maloney was killed," a fellow we all knew. He had a private RAP outfit. He had all the medicines and tablets you could think of, and he was a great asset to his platoon. And he was known as Doc Maloney. And then Colonel Owen, he'd been killed at Kokoda. We just couldn't believe it. He hadn't been with us so long. He was a gentleman, that man. And to hear of these things happening, and when we get over within distance of the noise of the firing over in the rainforest and over Kokoda, we were given orders that if we wanted to send a letter back home, this was our last chance. Well, none of us was prepared for that. We didn't have writing paper, and most of us didn't have writing materials. So I happened to have a set of pens there, and I wrote on toilet paper, which I have here now. I've saved it. I sent to Mum, tell her not to worry about us, everything okay. If they don't hear from us for a while, everything's okay. Couldn't say we were in action. You didn't feel like worrying them. So we were allowed to do that, no stamps or anything. And I just wrote it on toilet paper. It went across the trail by the Fuzzy Wuzzies, and it duly arrived home, which was great. And I have that same letter here now, and I can show you that after.
So when A Company arrived in the Kokoda area, B Company had already been in action. Mm-hmm. Where did you first form up? In Kokoda village itself?
No. Well, I don't know what you mean by formed up. We were formed up before we went over.
Yeah, no.
And we went through Deniki.
Yeah. When you went through Deniki,
Upper Deniki.
Where did you first go into action?
Oh, well, in a way, we're on the fringe of it at Upper Deniki. This is where there was firing just below us. We had Lower Deniki, then Isharaba, between us and Kokoda. And we would be looking down almost to in the direction to Kokoda. I was getting a drink of water from a bamboo, about a 6-inch diameter bamboo spout that was coming out of the side on my left. On the side of the hill, I was on the track, and there was water coming out of this about 4 feet above the ground, 1.2 metres, and I was getting a drink of water, and a stretcher, two blokes of our unit was carrying a stretcher towards me, and the body of the person was laying on his back, and I said, "Who is it?" And they said, "That's Joe Riley." He had dust in his eyes were open, and I couldn't recognise him, and he was in the hut opposite me at Darley. Joe was. He was a corporal. And he'd been down, I think Joe Hammond, there was a sergeant and another chap at Upper during stand to, and I was down there with them and Joe Riley that night, talking to them, filling in the time, and a bomb landed in there soon after and killed the three of them. And Joe was on that stretcher. I helped to bury him at the side of the trail, and Father Earl was there, and he carried some of his vestments wherever he went there. He had the service. We made a cross and put it there on Joe's grave. So that was some of that action. We're on the fringe of it there. And and then soon after that was reconnaissance going down towards Kokoda. On some of these I went on to check the enemies where they were and where it would be clear for us to advance on Kokoda, because we had gone down to Isharava at this time where you could look down onto Kokoda.
Once you carried out these reconnaissances, did you go back into Kokoda with A Company?
Yes, yes. We approached Kokoda, and the chaps were in occupation then. We went through the rubber plantation, and he was skipping from one tree trunk to the other, keeping that between us and the Japs. But there was not much action there. We pushed them out. They went ahead of us. We could just see them going. They left some equipment behind. I remember seeing a 45mm Smith & Wesson revolver and a Japanese hat just laying on the ground about 10 feet from me. Souvenirs. But I wouldn't touch them because I was frightened of booby traps. And somebody else would have got them later on. They have them hanging on their wall now. But that was our the closest encounter then at my platoon and A Company with the Japanese.
Down at Kokoda village?
Yes. Mm.
After that, did you then withdraw back to Deniki?
Yes. We got pushed back, but it was a roundabout way. We had to cross the river now. That's where one of our fellows, he was wounded and fell into the water. And I was sure he died later on. And that's where myself and a few of the others, we sort of got strayed from the main crowd. It was during the dark that we left Kokoda after the battle there. There was 7 o'clock at night. And I'd have to start a bit earlier. Myself, my platoon, we were down, and Win Murray was the platoon commander, sergeant, platoon commander there. We were down on drone defence. The drone was only just a strip of grass cut and some of the jungle cleared, about a quarter of a mile south of the Kokoda Plateau. And we're just cooking our lunch, or had a fire going at the side of the drome, and we heard firing. It was coming from the north end of the drome. And we thought, God, what's happening? And this is up where the rubber plantation was, and the Japs were attacking there. We didn't know what to do, and J.D. Mackay was with me then, and Win Murray and myself. We had a bit of a conference. What do we do? I suggested we try and get behind the Japs. We had a Thompson machine gun with us and give them the idea that we were greater number than what we were, but we thought that was stupid. So we had to decide to get back up to the plateau to reinforce our boys up top. And so we had to go up to the far end, which is the spot where Colonel Conlon was killed.
Colonel Owen was killed.
Colonel Owen, I'm sorry. Colonel Conlon was our original man. To get there, we couldn't walk along the drome. We were exposed to the Japs who were up above us. So we had to cut our way through the jungle. And that took quite a while to do. We got to the far end of the of the plateau, and I think it was Jim Cowie up above waving his Stetson. We didn't have steel helmets. We had our slouch hats there, and so we were recognised, and we clambered up there. I don't know how we did it. It's very steep, and that's where we went to our positions. Well, J.D. Mackay, his section was ordered to go up to where the Japs were, the north end, where 9 platoon A Company were fighting in the rubber plantation. And he went up there with his section. He got the military medal for doing that, and he deserved it. And so we just battled on there until orders were given that we had to get out. It was 7 o'clock when in the night that we decided to leave the plateau, and we had to go down
Did you go down the steep side?
Stairs, yes. On the drone side they were cut into the side of the plateau, and there was smoke from the bombs, the grenades that were thrown. There were Japs around us. It was hard to see who was us and who was them. Johnny Stormont was where the chief, I don't know, one of the European blokes from peacetime, where his house was there, and there was sort of a cellar underneath, and this is where old Doc Vernon was operating on blokes with a kerosene lamp. One of the blokes was Johnny Stormont, one of our blokes from A Company, and the other blokes knew that I had a file of, oh gosh, my memory's going there. It's for deadening pain, I'll think of it later, up behind my puggery of my hat. So I kept it there, I let different ones know. And I said, would you come over and give it to John? And I did. Johnny had a hole in the back of in his back, and he was breathing through it. And he was dying. So all I could do was give him this. Yes, I gave him that. And we had to leave him. There was no way. Somebody gave him a grenade, because we knew what would happen if the Japs come to him. And left him with a grenade. There was no way we could get him out of there. And that was the last I saw of John, was in that cellar type situation. And we were lucky to get out of there, and it was when I heard then one of my band blokes was 9 platoon, Vic Fowler, who was slightly deaf. He was, I think you could call it Garrett, a Jap came behind him while he's on sentry duty, and they pulled this wire around his throat from behind him and killed him. And that was bringing it closer home to me that one of my own, very own blokes from the band had been killed there up in the front. It was a case of us going bush then, and
heading back towards Denny.
Heading back, yes, and living off native gardens, and being wary of some of the natives there who hadn't mixed with white people before. We were right where amongst those sort of people. We have to let them see we were friendly.
Can you remember some of the soldiers you were with heading back to the battalion at that time?
No, I can't. Smith would be one. Private Smith, Ernie Radnell would be another. I think Don Daniels probably was there. He was a corporal. Don and I were together on Kokoda in the same punk hole. We used to take it and turn to look over the side to make sure the chaps weren't coming up with ladders or anything.
Up the side of the
plateau. Yes.
Yes. You eventually got back to the battalion area, and at that stage, was Ralph Honour, had Ralph Honour arrived at the battalion at that stage?
He arrived soon after, I think. No, he was there. I was sure he was there before he went down, like A Company went down to Kokoda. I was pretty sure he was, but I may be wrong there. It was such a turmoil and things. It was a little bit hard to remember who was where at that stage.
So you got back to the battalion area, and was this at Isharava or Deniki at this stage?
Isharava.
Okay,
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about Isharava then.
Well, Isharava, that was where a major battle occurred there on the trail, and there was bayonet fighting, hand-to-hand fighting by one of our companies on our flank, and we had went out on patrols. I was sent out with the patrol to make contact with another section who had gone out on a recce, and they were cut off. The Japs were between them and where we were, so I had to go out and make contact with them, which we did. And it was a case of just putting up a Japanese fire. It seemed to be firing from everywhere, from treetops and all around. You didn't know where the shots were coming from.
Were you platoon commander and had, at this stage, had Frank Trotter gone back with malaria?
Frank, that's where Frank Trotter had gone back with malaria, when we'd been in Kokoda and we can't come back to Isharava. It was during the Battle of Isharava.
So you were leading 7th Platoon at that stage?
Yes, yeah.
And did you have them in a certain position in Isharava?
Yes, we did. I can only picture it in my head at the moment without looking at maps now. We were in about the central position along the flank of the line of fire. And we'd already cut a clearing through the undergrowth and the bush ahead of us so that we could see whether there was any movement of the Japs, and that was pretty well immediately in front of the position where I was with my blokes. And it was a line of fire down there, and anyone across it, well, we could see. But the Japs were coming on our flanks as well. We were really outnumbered, they say 15 to 1, and we knew it, and running out of ammunition.
And you could see them from a distance, the Japanese?
You could see them, yeah, only not all the time. This was the problem, that you couldn't see them, you could hear a rustle. The only time you could see them was when they were down at Kokoda and on part way up. But it was only when they were attacking us, finally, when we were making our withdrawal, that they were getting within sight of us then on the plateau itself.
So at this stage, the 39th must have been under immense pressure at Isharava.
It was. Because we were without food, we were without ammunition, we were down to our last few rounds. And that had happened when we were at Kokoda, because as we were leaving Kokoda, doing the withdrawal from there, the aeroplane came over, dropping supplies to us, which we'd been waiting for the whole of our campaign there, and the chaps got the benefit of it. And there was a few curses from our blokes, I can tell you, when we were watching our supplies being dropped to the Japanese. So we were... without food, the morale was pretty crooked there, because we just didn't have support in the way of something to keep up our stamina, and also our weapons to hold the enemy back. So it was a bad situation.
You still would have had a few Bren guns at that stage also?
Yes, Lewis guns. Not too many. Bren guns had come up, which our unit did not know anything about them, how to work them. They had to learn after they'd been dropped at the Myola Lakes. And just dropped out of a plane, no parachutes, just dropped bodily onto these dry lakes. And that's how we got our food. It came to us as crumbs, anything that was in the biscuit line. And they just dropped up, wrapped up in blankets.
And these were the native carriers that brought these through?
And the carriers brought them through to us. And one of our blokes got killed in a hut, and it went through the hole in the thatch roof, and I slept in the spot where this happened. I think it was, I'm not sure the name of the place, I think it was Nauru. And there's a hole in the roof still where I slept, and he copped a bundle of supplies. It could have been jam, ginger jam or something like that, and that killed him. And his name is on the big war memorial at Canberra. I looked it up to see it.
Speaking of the native carriers and the native soldiers. Can you tell us a bit about the native Sinopa who you're pictured with in the 39th Battalion History?
Yeah, he was in the constabulary, I think, there. I thought it was the Papuan Infantry PIB, but it was one of the Papuan units there, and he knew the area like the back of his hand, and he was there in many cases to lead. I don't know all the jobs he did, but I know for other platoons and companies that they called on Sinope to lead them out of difficult situations, and he was ahead of me where I was on a patrol when we were reconnoitring Kokoda to check up the location of the Japs there, and he went ahead. He had a bit of grass in his hair and he had skirts on, which most of those natives did then who were in the police patrols or in the army. And he was just a great bloke that everyone relied on, and I think he saved many lives in the way he was used and acted for the 39th Battalion. And it was just a darn shame to think, that he's not around now.
At the Battle of Ishirava, when things were looking pretty grim and the 39th was holding out against immense odds, the 2nd 14th Battalion arrived.
Yep.
Can you remember that and tell us?
I certainly can. We were given orders to tidy our positions. This is up in the front line, tidy up, put our weapons, grenades and things around our funk hole or our little trenches so the 2nd 14th can use them. And when they arrived, a funny thing happened, a bit of a coincidence. I was walking past some of the jokers of the 2nd 14 and someone said, "Les." I looked out, it was one of my mates. He was in the band in Bendigo with me, old mates. We used to go out camping together. And I introduced him to his wife, who he married one band day in Golden Square, suburb of Bendigo. The band I was playing in, Freddie played in it, and I introduced him to his wife, who was a lovely-looking girl with another friend there, and it was a lovely summer's day, and I introduced them. Louis Smart, her name was. I'd known her for years, and they got married. And I, just going further on, I was at his funeral only a couple of years ago. But he was in the 2nd 14th, and amongst all those blokes in that situation, we met each other. I only had time to say, "G'day, Fred," and "G'day, Les." And he got me, he said, "Somebody wants you to go over and see..." I can't think of his name now, another chap from Bendigo, and he was badly wounded and he wanted a cigarette. And I didn't have any cigarettes, didn't have any tobacco or smokes, although I smoked then. And I got his first aid bandage, which every soldier had to carry in a certain pocket in his uniform or his shirt, and he's only to use it on himself, no one else. So I got that and put it over the wound. And I'm sorry, I'd just forgotten his name. I knew him well. But that was just a little incident that happened. But these blokes, when they came, they looked so big, so strong and so fresh. And we thought, oh, this is beaut. When the word came over that we were to withdraw and be relieved, we decided somebody, it would be Colonel Honour, I would take it, and the officers, and we backed him to the hilt that we were to stay there with the 2nd 14th because there was no way they could have repelled the Japanese. We were outnumbered so much that was just impossible. And so we stayed on, and I feel proud to think I was one of those blokes who did that.
So then obviously there was a fair attack from the Japanese after that, which the 2nd 14th bore a fair bit of the brunt, didn't they?
Yes, yeah. Yes.
And the 39 supported them.
Yeah, supported them, and I think it would be the first time when chocos sort of supported the second AIF. There was a big difference between them back home, but we acted as a rearguard action at times, and were the last people out at each movement, and at the enemy back while the 2nd 14th got through, then we would go through while they did the same. And that's how we did it. And I don't call it retreated, our withdrawal.
So were you one of the last out of Isharava, Les?
Yeah, one of the last, yes. Oh, yes. Because at that time, and this is where J.D. Mackay, who's become well known now, and I'm proud to have fought beside J.D. He was corporal, and I was platoon commander at this stage. And we were drawing from Isharava, and I was checking. I had to make sure every bloke was getting out all right, and a chapter coming down at us then. And I saw the blokes just disappearing at the end of this cleared area into the undergrowth, and I looked and I thought Bob Nimmo wasn't with him, one of our blokes, and there he was. He's in about the middle of the battle area, and he's on his knees, and his buttock was blown to pieces.
He'd been left behind?
He'd been left behind. Probably no one had noticed. Everyone was just getting out and everything, and at the time it was just, I suppose, just a big hassle there. But when it had cleared that you could see that who was who, and so I was on my own out there with him, and I thought, it's impossible, I can't get him out. He was a heavy bloke, young Bob, and he couldn't help himself, he couldn't walk. I thought, I don't know what to do. And I looked, and J.D. Mackay was the last man just getting out behind the platoon into the bush, and I yelled out, I said, J.D., come back and give me a hand with Nimmo. And J.D. came back. Now, he could have not heard me, intentionally or not. He came back, no worries at all. I can see why now, that's the type of bloke he was. And if he hadn't come back, I don't know what I'd have done. I couldn't have left Bob there, and yet if I'd have gone there, well, I'd have been there with him too. So JD came back, we grabbed an arm each, and we dragged Bob. That's what we did. He couldn't help himself. Just dragged him. His trousers were coming off. He said, don't mind me so-and-so trousers, get me out. And we were falling over, little cliffs, might be 3 or 4 feet high, just running over them and crashing on the other side. I know I had grenades inside my shirt, 4 or 5 of them. You carried as many as you could. If you found any around, you grabbed them, because they were the best weapon out there, better than anything else. And they were flying out of my shirt, and we'd going head over heels. But we got Bob out and handed him over. And JD, I knows later, one of the books, when he backed up what I said there, recorded his version, said that Bob got well, and he went with another unit later on. So that was my memories of Isharava, and I'm proud to have been associated with J.D. Mackay. He went to great heights later. He was at Vietnam, which I didn't know, and he's just loaded down with medals. I don't know how he carries them, but he's a good bloke. They were all good blokes. They were people you had to rely on. You had to rely on them, and that's how it was there. And I can say that of my band blokes, every bloke there, I could see them today and think, you were a great bloke. And they were behind you. And this is what you had to have in situations like that, to trust that man at the side of you.
So, after you got Bob Nimmo out, and you were then with the 2nd 14th, you then withdrew back up the track towards Ura Creek, or probably towards Kargi, Ura Creek?
A withdrawal from Isharava would be to Lower Danakey, then Upper Danakey, and then I just forget the others. Then Ura Creek probably be the next. I think there was one between there, but Ura Creek was one of the main ones.
And at Ura Creek, you were going across that big log, you were telling me.
That's right.
And
George Mowat slipped, was and there was just enough surface there for me to get a grip of my feet to grab his arm and steady him up. And
Because the Japanese are actually attacking at that
they were
stage.
following us, yes, yeah.
And they were firing at you as you were crossing the line.
Pretty well. There were some of the blokes still to cross the line. We weren't the last, but we're amongst those last few. So the Japs weren't that far behind us in the amongst the trees.
And at Ura Creek, Damien Parra took some famous footage.
Yes.
And you can remember
I remember
Damien
him
Parra
taking.
taking?
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. Ura Creek was a misty place. You look down onto it and there was mist, and you had the creek running alongside it and the rustleless water and native huts there. And I was just above it on the Port Moresby side of the village, looking down at it, and Damien Parra was in a tree about 4 feet above me. He was standing there with his camera, and I've seen photographs of him in that actual position, and he was photographing looking down onto the Ura Creek on the village down below. But in the night time it was ghostly there. You'd hear voices and a few fires going. It was far enough behind the Jap lines to have fires there, and it was just a ghostly place, and we stayed there overnight, but it was wet and damp and miserable. But I could tell you more about when we were withdrawing from Kokoda, what happened at Ura Creek. There was the trail went through Ura Creek, and it was up a steep hill, and the Japs had that covered with shells from their mountain guns or their mortars, so you couldn't get up that way during our withdrawal. You had to go up a very sharp incline to the left of it as we're facing our way in the direction of Moresby. It was a matter of hanging on to the roots of shrubs sticking out of the ground, and it was always perpendicular. And that was to keep away from that track that was being covered by the Japs, by the enemy. And I was going to leave my rifle behind. I thought, I can't carry that up there. And I thought, when I get up there, I've got to use it. So I got up there, but bullets were splattering the side of us as we were going up this very sharp incline till we got up top. I can't hear of anyone having got killed doing it. We were all lucky. But that's how bad it was. We were hanging on to the stems of roots of the bushes that were coming out of the side of that cliff.
And when the battalion was finally pulled out of the trail, of the battles on the trail, you went back to the Koiteki area and reformed.
Mm-hmm.
Was at that stage you got appendicitis, was that right?
That's right. I got pains. I was drilling the blokes. We were back to parade ground stuff then. And I was drilling my blokes, and I had to lean against a tree. Every time I talked or coughed or anything like that, it was terrific pain. I was rushed over to 2nd 9th AGH, which was across the road from us. And it was an immediate operation, emergency they called it, and Captain Buna Smith, Keith Buna Smith, a surgeon or a doctor from South Australia, operated on me, and I had peritonitis, and he said I was lucky to be alive. He thought I'd been lost to them. So it seems like I had that while I was in action, but it hadn't played up until I'd got back.
So then the battalion went on to Gona, but you were in hospital at that stage.
Yes. Oh, by the way, I had malaria going over on the second day, going over right back at the beginning when we were somewhere around Uberry, which was our first stop. It was just after then that I contacted malaria, but we still went on.
Well, Les, on behalf of the 39th Battalion History Subcommittee, I'd like to thank you very much for this great and interesting interview. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Been great.